I remember standing in my kitchen on Thanksgiving Day, watching my daughter-in-law throw my sweet potato pie straight into the trash can, not scrape it off a plate, not wrap it up for later. She picked up the whole pie, the one I'd spent 4 hours making from my late wife's recipe, walked it over to that silver trash bin, and dropped it in like it was spoiled meat. The sound it made still haunts me, a hollow thud, like something precious dying. My son Marcus stood right there, 10 feet away, watching the whole thing happen. He saw my face. He saw my hands trembling. And you know what that boy did? He looked down at his phone and walked out of the room. That was the moment. The exact moment I decided I was done being a fool for people who thought my love was worthless. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this all started, because you need to understand what I built before you can understand what I burned down. My name is Vernon Lee Washington. I'm 65 years old, and when this story began, I was living in a modest 3-bedroom house in Columbus, Ohio, the same house where I raised my boy, the same house where my wife Lorraine took her last breath. Now I'm somewhere else, somewhere quieter, but we'll get to that. This ain't just a story about money or disrespect. This is about what happens when you give everything to the people you love and they forget you're even human. So before you click away, before you scroll to something easier, let me ask you something. Have you ever loved someone so much you became invisible to them? If you have, then you already know how this feels. Sit with me. Walk with me. Let me show you how a man can build an empire for his child and watch that same child hand the keys to someone who despises him. The first time I held Marcus James Washington, he weighed 6 pounds and 4 ounces. I remember because the nurse wrote it on a little card they gave us, and Lorraine kept that card in her Bible until the day she died. It was October 17th, 1984, 3:15 in the morning at Riverside Methodist Hospital. I've been working double shifts at the Ford plant for 6 months straight, saving up for his arrival. And when they finally put him in my arms, I thought I understood what people meant when they talked about purpose. He had these tiny fingers that wrapped around my thumb like he was already holding on for dear life. His eyes weren't even open yet, but I made him a promise right there in that delivery room, with Lorraine exhausted and glowing beside me. I promised him he'd never struggle the way I did, never go hungry like I did, never watch his mama cry over bills like I watched mine. I promised him a better life, and I kept that promise. God knows I kept it. We lived in a small apartment on the south side back then, and every dollar I earned had a destination. Rent, food, baby formula, diapers. I worked 50, sometimes 60 hours a week, and Lorraine worked part-time at a grocery store when she could get her sister to watch Marcus. We didn't have much, but what we had, we gave to that boy. When he turned 5, I bought him his first bike, red with white streamers on the handles, and I ran beside him on Franklin Street for 2 hours until he learned to balance. When he was 7, Lorraine got sick the first time. Breast cancer. Stage 2. We caught it early, thank God, but the medical bills nearly drowned us. I took out a loan, worked nights at a warehouse, sold my daddy's old car. We survived it, but it taught me something important. Life can take everything from you in a blink, so you better hold tight to what matters. Marcus was what mattered. Marcus was everything. By the time Marcus hit high school, things had changed. I'd worked my way up at Ford, gotten into management, and Lorraine had beaten cancer. We moved into the house on Sutton Road, 3 bedrooms, a backyard with a fence, a garage where I kept my tools. Marcus was a smart kid, not straight A's, but smart where it counted. He played basketball, ran track, had friends who respected him. He never got in serious trouble, never gave us gray hairs the way some kids did their parents. He was good, maybe too good. Maybe I spoiled him without realizing it. I paid for his class trips, his team uniforms, his prom tucks. When he wanted to go to Ohio State, I didn't blink. I took out loans. I refinanced the house. I worked overtime until my knees ached and my back screamed. Because that's what fathers do, right? We break ourselves so our sons can walk easy. I thought I was building him a foundation. I didn't know I was building him a pedestal. Then he met Simone. It was his junior year at Ohio State 2005. He brought her home for Sunday dinner, and I'll never forget the way she walked into our house. She was beautiful. I'll give her that. 5'7", light brown skin, hair down to her shoulders, and a smile that could sell ice to Alaska. She wore a white sundress and heels, even though it was casual, and she shook my hand like she was at a business meeting. "Mr. Washington," she said, looking me dead in the eye, "Marcus has told me so much about you." Lorraine loved her immediately. Women see things different than men, I guess. My wife saw a young woman with confidence, ambition, poise. I saw something else. I saw the way Simone's eyes traveled around our home, not admiring but assessing. I saw the way she touched things lightly like she was measuring their worth. But I didn't say nothing. Marcus was in love, and who was I to stand in the way of that? So I smiled. I welcomed her. I played the good father. And that right there was my first mistake. By the time Marcus graduated in 2006, he and Simone were engaged. I paid for the ring, $8,000 for 2 carats, because she wanted something memorable. I paid for the wedding, $23,000 at a hotel ballroom downtown, because she wanted something elegant. I paid for their honeymoon, a week in Jamaica, because she wanted something romantic. Marcus had a job lined up at a marketing firm, entry level, $32,000 a year. Simone was still in grad school, getting her MBA, not working. So guess who covered their first apartment deposit, their furniture, their car payments when Marcus's used Honda broke down? I did. Every time. Without hesitation. Because that's what I'd promised that little 6-pound baby 22 years earlier. A better life. No struggles. And if I had to work until I was 70 to give him that, then so be it. What I didn't realize, what I couldn't see yet, was that every dollar I gave them made me smaller in Simone's eyes. Every check I wrote made me less of a man and more of a resource. And the day would come when she'd decide that resource wasn't worth respecting anymore. The first time Simone disrespected me, I almost didn't catch it. It was subtle, the way poison is subtle. We were at their apartment, one of those new builds in the short north with exposed brick and high ceilings, and I'd stopped by to drop off a check for their electric bill. Marcus had called me 2 days earlier, stressed about money, and I told him I'd help. I always helped. When I knocked, Simone answered in yoga pants and a tank top, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She didn't smile, just opened the door wider and walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway like a delivery man. "Marcus is in the shower," she said over her shoulder. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and stood there holding an envelope with $600 cash inside. "I can wait," I said. She was on her phone, texting, not looking at me. "You can just leave it on the counter." Not "thank you," not "we appreciate it," just instructions like I was staff. I left the money and walked out. Didn't say goodbye. Drove home with my hands tight on the steering wheel, telling myself I was overreacting. Young people were different these days, less formal, less respectful maybe, but that was just the culture, right? Lorraine would have told me I was being too sensitive. She would have said Simone was stressed, busy, probably didn't mean anything by it. But Lorraine had been gone for 3 years by then. Cancer came back in 2009. Stage 4. Took her in 6 months, and without her there to soften my edges, to translate the world for me, I started seeing things clearer. Or maybe I just started seeing things, period. Either way, that moment in their apartment stuck with me. It was small, but it was the first crack in a dam that would eventually break wide open. The disrespect grew slowly, like mold behind a wall. At family dinners, Simone would cut me off mid-sentence to tell her own story. If I offered advice, she'd smile tightly and say, "That's not really how things work anymore, Mr. Washington." If I asked Marcus about work, she'd answer for him like he couldn't speak for himself. And Marcus? He never said a word. Never told her to slow down, to be respectful, to remember who I was. He just sat there, eating his food, scrolling his phone, letting her run the show. I started to wonder if he even noticed. Or worse, if he noticed and didn't care. I'd paid for their life, their comfort, their dreams, and I was becoming invisible in my own son's eyes. That hurt more than Simone's attitude ever could. Because disrespect from a stranger is one thing, but disrespect from your own blood, the child you broke your back for, that cuts different. Then came the bigger asks. In 2011, Marcus wanted to buy a house. Not a small starter home, a 4-bedroom colonial in Upper Arlington with a 2-car garage and a backyard big enough for the kids they didn't have yet. The asking price was $350,000. Marcus called me on a Tuesday night, excited, talking fast about interest rates and square footage and how this was the one. I listened. I always listened. Then he said the words I'd been dreading. "Dad, we're $20,000 short on the down payment. The bank won't approve us without it. Can you help?" I was 60 years old. I'd been retired from Ford for 2 years, living off a pension and Social Security. My savings weren't infinite. But I said yes. I took out a home equity loan on my own house, the house Lorraine and I had built our life in, and I gave them the money. Marcus cried when I handed him the check, hugged me tight, said, "I'm going to pay you back, Dad. I promise." Simone stood in their apartment doorway, arms crossed, and said, "This is really going to help us build wealth. Not thank you. Not we're so grateful. Just a statement about wealth. Like I was an investment, not a father." They moved into that house 3 months later, and I helped them. Packed boxes, loaded the U-Haul, painted their guest bedroom, assembled furniture. I was happy to do it, happy to see Marcus thriving, building something solid. But every time I walked through those rooms my money had helped buy, I felt strange, like I was a visitor in my own son's dream. Simone redecorated everything, expensive rugs, fancy light fixtures, art on the walls that cost more than my monthly pension. And every time I visited, I'd see something new, something I knew Marcus couldn't afford on his salary. I never asked where the money came from. I didn't want to know, but the weight of it pressed on me anyway, because I was still giving, still helping with car repairs, medical bills, Christmas gifts, and the more I gave, the less they seemed to see me. I wasn't Vernon anymore. I wasn't Dad. I was a bank, an ATM, a safety net they only remembered when they were falling. My younger brother Calvin saw it before I did. Calvin was 2 years younger than me, lived in Atlanta, worked in construction most of his life. He was rough around the edges, said what was on his mind, didn't sugarcoat nothing. He came up to visit in the summer of 2013, stayed with me for a week, and on the 3rd day, he asked if we could go see Marcus. I called ahead, told them we'd be stopping by around lunchtime. When we pulled up to that big house in Upper Arlington, Calvin let out a low whistle. "Damn, Vern," he said. "Boy living better than us." I smiled, proud. "That's the point," I said. "I wanted him to have more than I did." Calvin looked at me sideways. "Question is, does he know what it cost you?" I didn't answer, didn't want to think about it. We walked up to the front door and I knocked. Marcus answered, grinned wide, pulled me into a hug. Then he saw Calvin and they did that handshake hug thing men do. "Uncle Cal, man, it's been too long." We went inside and Simone was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. She glanced up, gave a small wave, said hello, but didn't come over. Didn't offer us anything to drink. Didn't ask how Calvin's drive was. Just kept chopping. Calvin noticed. I saw his jaw tighten. We sat in the living room, talked about sports and work and the heat wave that summer. Marcus was animated, happy doc, showing us pictures on his phone of a vacation they'd taken to Cancun the month before. I hadn't known about the trip, hadn't been invited to see the photos until now. Calvin asked, "Y'all doing pretty good then, huh?" Marcus nodded. "Yeah, man, things are finally coming together. Got a promotion at work. Simone's consulting business is picking up. We're blessed." Calvin looked at me. I looked away because I knew the promotion hadn't covered everything. I knew I just sent them $1,500 2 weeks ago for a roof repair. But I didn't say nothing. Didn't want to embarrass Marcus in front of his uncle. We stayed for about an hour. When we left, Calvin didn't say a word until we were back in my truck. Then he let it rip. "Vern, you see how she treated you in there?" I gripped the steering wheel. "She was fine. She didn't even offer us water, man. Didn't thank you for nothing. Didn't acknowledge you. And Marcus?" Calvin shook his head. "That boy's so busy trying to impress his wife, he can't even see his own father anymore." I felt my chest tighten. "He's just living his life, Cal. That's what I wanted for him." "Living his life off your dime," Calvin shot back. "And that woman in there, she looks at you like you're the help. You notice that?" I had noticed. I'd been noticing for 2 years. But hearing Calvin say it out loud made it real, made it hurt. "What am I supposed to do?" I asked quietly. "Stop giving them money?" Calvin looked at me hard. Vern, I love you. You're my brother. But yes, that's exactly what you need to do before they bleed you dry and forget your name. I didn't listen. Couldn't. Because stopping meant admitting I'd made a mistake. Meant admitting that the son I'd built everything for didn't see me as a father anymore. So I kept giving, kept helping, kept playing the role I thought I was supposed to play. In 2014, they had their first baby, a little girl named Kennedy. She was beautiful, 7 pounds even, full head of curly hair, bright eyes that looked just like Marcus's. I was in the hospital room when she was born, standing in the corner while Simone's mother and sisters crowded around the bed. Nobody asked me to hold her first. Nobody thanked me for the $5,000 I'd put toward the nursery furniture. When I finally got to hold Kennedy, 3 hours after she was born, Simone's mother said, "Don't keep her too long. She needs to eat." Like I was taking up precious time. I handed the baby back after 2 minutes and left the hospital. Sat in my truck in the parking lot and cried for the first time since Lorraine died. Calvin called me that night, asked how it went. I lied and said it was beautiful. He didn't believe me. "Vern," he said softly, "you got to start putting yourself first. You got to stop letting them make you feel small." I wanted to argue, wanted to defend Marcus, but I was too tired, too empty. "I'll think about it," I said, and I did. I thought about it while I sent them money for daycare, thought about it while I bought Kennedy's Christmas presents, thought about it while Marcus called asking for help with property taxes. I thought about it every single time I wrote a check, every time I showed up to help, every time I sat in their house feeling like a ghost. But thinking didn't change nothing, because I was afraid that if I stopped giving, I'd stop mattering, afraid that the only reason Marcus still called me dad was because I was useful. And if I stopped being useful, then what was I? By 2016, the pattern was set in stone. Marcus would call every 6 to 8 weeks with some new crisis. The water heater broke. Kennedy needed surgery for her tonsils. Simone's car needed a transmission. Every time, I'd ask if they tried budgeting differently, cutting back somewhere. Every time, Marcus would sigh and say, "Dad, you don't understand how expensive everything is now." And then he'd go quiet, waiting for me to offer. And I always did. I'd transfer money online or write a check and drop it off. Simone never said thank you anymore. She'd just take the envelope, nod once, and go back to whatever she was doing. And Marcus? He stopped looking me in the eye when he asked. Like he was ashamed, but not ashamed enough to stop asking. That's what hurt the most. Watching my son become someone I didn't recognize. The holidays were the worst. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. These were supposed to be times when family came together, when love was bigger than money. But at Marcus and Simone's house, the holidays felt like performances. Everything had to be perfect. The table had to be set just right. The food had to be Instagram worthy. The decorations had to match some theme Simone had found on Pinterest. And me? I was expected to show up with gifts, with cash, with my wallet open. In 2017, I brought a honey-baked ham to Thanksgiving dinner, spent $80 on it. When I walked in, Simone looked at it and said, "Oh, we're actually doing a tasting menu this year, small plates. I don't think we'll have room for that." She said it sweet, smiling like she was doing me a favor. Marcus was setting the table. He heard her. He didn't say nothing, just kept folding napkins like he hadn't heard his wife dismiss the food I'd brought. I put the ham in the fridge and sat down at the table with everyone else. Simone's parents, her 2 sisters, their husbands, and little Kennedy, who was 3 by then. The meal was tiny portions of food I couldn't pronounce. Everyone took pictures before eating, talked about vacations and wine and real estate values. I sat at the end of the table, quiet, feeling like I didn't belong in my own son's home. After dinner, while everyone was in the living room, I went to the kitchen to help clean up. Simone's mother, Patricia, was loading the dishwasher. She looked up when I walked in. "Vernon, you don't have to do that," she said, not unkindly. "Go relax." But I wanted to help, wanted to feel useful. So I started clearing plates. That's when Simone walked in, saw me, saw her mother, and said, loud enough for me to hear, "Mom, leave those. Vernon can handle it. Not Dad can help. Not Marcus's father. Just Vernon." Like I was the housekeeper. I froze. Patricia looked uncomfortable. Simone walked out. I finished loading the dishwasher in silence, then left without saying goodbye to anyone. Marcus texted me an hour later. "Dad, where'd you go?" I didn't answer. Turned off my phone and sat in my dark living room, staring at Lorraine's picture on the mantel. She'd been gone 8 years by then, but I still talked to her sometimes. "Baby," I whispered, "I don't know what to do. I gave him everything, and he's letting her treat me like I'm nothing." The house was silent. No answers came. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the weight of my own mistakes pressing down on my chest. That night, I made a decision, not to cut them off, not yet, but to start pulling back, to see if anyone would notice, to see if anyone would care. For 6 months, I said no. When Marcus called asking for help with their vacation fund, I said I couldn't afford it. When Kennedy's birthday came around, I bought a small gift instead of the expensive toy Simone had sent me a link for. When they invited me to Sunday dinner, I made excuses, said I was tired, said I wasn't feeling well. I wanted to see what would happen if I stopped being the safety net. And you know what? Nothing changed. Marcus didn't call more often to check on me. Simone didn't soften. Nobody asked if I was okay. They just adjusted, found other ways to get what they needed. And I realized something that broke me. They didn't need me. They needed my money. And the moment I stopped providing it, I stopped existing to them. That should have been my breaking point. Should have been when I walked away for good. But I didn't, because I'm a fool. And fools always give people one more chance. I almost didn't go to Thanksgiving dinner that year. I'd been pulling back for 18 months, and the distance between me and Marcus had grown into a canyon. We barely talked. He barely called. When he did call, it was short, surface-level stuff about the weather or Kennedy's kindergarten. Never anything real. Never "Dad, I miss you," or "Dad, I'm sorry." Just polite conversation, the kind you have with acquaintances. But 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Marcus called and said, "Dad, Simone really wants you to come this year. She feels like we haven't seen you enough." I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that maybe finally they'd realize what they'd been doing. So I said yes. I spent the week before making my mama's sweet potato pie, the one Lorraine used to make every holiday. It took me 4 hours between peeling the potatoes, mixing the filling, getting the crust just right. It was a labor of love, a peace offering. When I pulled up to their house that Thursday afternoon, the driveway was full of cars. Simone's whole family was there, plus some people I didn't recognize. I parked on the street, grabbed the pie from the passenger seat, and walked up to the front door. Marcus opened it, smiled big, pulled me into a hug. "Dad, good to see you." He looked tired, older, lines around his eyes I hadn't noticed before. I handed him the pie. "Made your mama's recipe," I said. He looked down at it, and something flickered across his face. Not joy, not gratitude, something else. "Thanks, Dad. Come on in." The house smelled like turkey and wine and too many people in one space. The living room was packed. Simone's family laughing loud, holding drinks, kids running around. I recognized Simone's father, Gerald, a retired dentist who'd always looked at me like I was beneath him. I nodded at him. He nodded back. That was it. I made my way to the kitchen, looking for somewhere to put my coat. That's when I saw Simone. She was standing at the island, talking to her sisters, and on the counter in front of her was a spread of desserts. Store-bought pies from some fancy bakery, chocolate cake, cookies arranged on a crystal platter. Everything looked perfect, professional, like something out of a magazine. Marcus set my pie down at the edge of the counter, and Simone glanced over. Her eyes landed on the pie. Homemade. Simple. Not fancy. And I saw it. I saw the judgment flash across her face. She didn't say nothing at first, just picked up the pie, looked at it from different angles like she was inspecting it, and then she turned to her sister and said, loud enough for me to hear, "I told Marcus we didn't need to do homemade this year. Everything's catered." My chest tightened. Marcus was right there. He heard her. He looked at me, then at her, then at the floor. I opened my mouth to say something, I don't even know what. But before I could, Simone picked up my pie, walked it over to the trash can and dropped it in. Didn't scrape it off a plate, didn't cover it up, just dropped it in the trash like it was garbage. The sound of it hitting the bottom of that bin echoed through the kitchen. Everyone stopped talking. Her sisters looked uncomfortable. Marcus froze. And Simone turned around, smiled at her guests, and said, Okay, who wants wine? Like she hadn't just thrown away 4 hours of my life. Like she hadn't just spit on my dead wife's memory. I stood there, my hands shaking, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. And I looked at my son, looked at Marcus, waited for him to say something, waited for him to defend me, to tell his wife she'd crossed a line, to be my son for once in his life. Marcus looked at me, his mouth opened, and then he looked down at his phone, turned around, and walked out of the kitchen. That was it. That was the moment. That was the day I stopped being a father and became a ghost. I walked out of that house without saying a word, got in my truck, drove home, and when I got there, I sat at my kitchen table and I wrote down every dollar I'd ever given them. Every loan, every check, every payment. It came to over $300,000. $300,000, and they'd just thrown my pie in the trash. That night, I called my bank, canceled the credit card I'd given Marcus for emergencies, stopped the automatic transfers I'd set up for their mortgage, and I made a decision. I was done. Done breaking my back for people who saw me as a wallet. Done being disrespected in my own son's house. I was going to teach them the most important lesson I should have taught them years ago, that love without respect is worthless. And they were about to learn that lesson the hard way. The first week after I walked out of that Thanksgiving dinner, my phone didn't ring once. Not Monday, not Tuesday, not Wednesday. I sat in my living room every evening, the TV on, but the sound muted, watching that phone on the coffee table like it was a bomb that might explode. Marcus didn't call to ask where I'd gone, didn't text to check if I'd made it home safe. Nothing. And that silence told me everything I needed to know about how much I mattered when I wasn't writing checks. I'd canceled the credit card on Friday night, the one I'd given Marcus 3 years ago for emergencies, that had turned into everything from grocery runs to date nights. I'd stopped the automatic mortgage transfer that had been padding their payment by $800 a month for the past 2 years. I'd cut every financial thread that connected me to their life. And I waited to see how long it would take for them to notice I was gone. By the second week of December, Marcus finally called. It was a Tuesday morning, 8:30, and I was sitting at my kitchen table drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, the actual paper kind, not the internet. My phone buzzed. His name lit up the screen. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Dad, hey!" Marcus sounded rushed, distracted. "Listen, I tried to use the card you gave me yesterday and it declined. I think there might be something wrong with it. Can you check with the bank?" "No, how are you?" "No, sorry about Thanksgiving. Just straight to the problem." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Nothing's wrong with it," I said calmly. "I canceled it." Silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing, could almost see the confusion on his face. "You canceled it? Why?" I wanted to scream, wanted to ask him if he was serious, if he really didn't know why, but instead I said, "Didn't need it anymore." More silence. "Then, Dad, is this about Thanksgiving? Look, I'm sorry we didn't get to spend more time together. It was chaotic. You know how Simone's family is." "This isn't about time, Marcus." My voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath it. "This is about respect, or the lack of it." I heard him exhale, that frustrated sound he made when he didn't want to deal with something. "Dad, come on. Don't do this. We're family." "Are we?" I asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. Marcus cleared his throat. "Of course we are. Look, I gotta run. I'm late for work. But can you reactivate the card? I'll call you this weekend and we'll talk, okay?" He didn't wait for an answer, just hung up. I set the phone down and stared at Lorraine's picture on the wall. "He still doesn't see it, baby," I whispered. "Still doesn't understand." But he would. They both would. Because the bills don't stop coming just because Daddy stops paying them. And reality has a way of teaching lessons that love couldn't. That weekend came and went. Marcus didn't call. Christmas was 3 weeks away, and normally by now, I'd have already bought gifts, already transferred money for their holiday expenses, already made plans to spend the day with them. This year, I did nothing. I bought myself a small tree, 4 feet tall, pre-lit, and set it up in my living room. Hung the ornaments Lorraine and I had collected over 30 years of marriage. Put on Nat King Cole's Christmas album and sat in the dark with just the tree lights glowing, remembering when holidays meant something. When Marcus was little, he'd wake up at 5 in the morning on Christmas, run into our bedroom, and shake us awake. "Santa came! Santa came!" he'd yell, his whole face bright with joy. I'd carry him downstairs on my shoulders, Lorraine right behind us with the camera, and we'd watch him tear into presents while drinking coffee spiked with Baileys. Those were good years, simple years, when love was pure and money didn't complicate everything. I miss those days so bad it physically hurt. On December 23rd, I got a text from Marcus. Not a call. A text. "Dad, what do you want us to get you for Christmas?" I stared at that message for 10 minutes. What did I want? I wanted a son who saw me as a father, not an ATM. I wanted respect. I wanted acknowledgement of everything I'd sacrificed. But I couldn't text that. So I wrote back, "Don't need anything. Merry Christmas." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "You coming over Christmas Day?" I thought about it. Thought about sitting in that big house surrounded by Simone's family, being invisible again, being disrespected again, and something in me just broke free. "No," I texted back. "Got other plans." It was a lie. I had no plans. But I wasn't going to spend another holiday being treated like help. The dots appeared one more time, then stopped. No response. And that was fine. I'd spent 65 years putting other people first. Maybe it was time to put myself first for once. Christmas morning, I woke up alone in my house, made myself breakfast, eggs, bacon, toast, the works, sat at my table and ate slow, tasting every bite. At 10 o'clock, my phone rang. Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at noon, again at 3. Each time I let it ring. At 6 in the evening, he sent a text. "Dad, Kennedy keeps asking where you are. Call me back." That one stung. Kennedy, my grandbaby. She was 5 years old now. Probably didn't even understand why Grandpa wasn't there. But I couldn't break, couldn't give in just because they learned to use that little girl as leverage. So I texted back, "Tell Kennedy I love her. Merry Christmas." And I turned off my phone. Spent the rest of the night watching old westerns and drinking whiskey that burned my throat the way regret burned my chest. This was the loneliest Christmas of my life. But it was also the first Christmas in years where I wasn't pretending to be happy, and there was something freeing about that, something honest. The storm was coming. I could feel it. But I was ready. For the first time in a long time, I was ready. January hit Marcus and Simone like a freight train. I know because I've been paying attention to their patterns for years, and January was always their hardest month. Christmas spending, property taxes, Kennedy's preschool tuition for the spring semester, everything came due at once. Normally, I get a call the first week of January, and I'd wire them $5,000, sometimes $7,000 to help them catch up. This year, my phone stayed silent until January 9th. When Marcus finally called, I was at the grocery store, pushing a cart through the produce section, trying to decide if I wanted apples or oranges. I answered on the third ring. "Hey, Marcus, Dad." His voice was tight, stressed. "I need to talk to you about something." I picked up a bag of apples, examined them like they were the most important thing in the world. "I'm listening." He took a breath. "We're in a tight spot financially, really tight. The mortgage is due and we're short about $3,000. I was wondering if—" "No." The word came out clean, simple, final. Marcus went quiet. I could hear Simone's voice in the background, sharp and urgent, but I couldn't make out the words. "Dad, I'm not asking for a handout. I'll pay you back. I just need help right now." I stopped walking, set the apples in my cart. "Marcus, I've been helping you for 15 years. I took out loans. I refinanced my house. I worked overtime until my body broke down. I gave you everything I had." My voice was still calm, but there was an edge now. "And at Thanksgiving, your wife threw my pie in the trash, and you walked away. So no, I'm not helping anymore." I heard him breathe heavy, like he was trying to control his temper. "So this is what it is? You're punishing us because of one bad moment?" "One bad moment?" I almost laughed. "Son, this has been building for years. Years of disrespect. Years of being treated like I'm invisible unless you need money. I'm not punishing you. I'm just done being used. I never used you." His voice rose defensive. "Everything you did, you offered. I never forced you." That hit me hard, because he was right. I had offered, every time. But that didn't make it hurt less. "You're right," I said quietly. "I offered, because I loved you, Because I wanted you to have a better life. But love goes both ways, Marcus, and somewhere along the way, you forgot that. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. Dad, I'm sorry. I really am. I should have said something at Thanksgiving. I should have stood up for you. But I can't change that now. What I can do is ask for help now when I really need it. Please. The word please almost broke me, almost made me reach for my phone to open the banking app. But I couldn't. If I gave in now, nothing would change. Figure it out, Marcus, I said. Like I had to figure it out when I was your age. And I hung up. The next 3 weeks were torture. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was doing the right thing, wondering if I was being too harsh. My brother Calvin called from Atlanta, and I told him everything. You did the right thing, Vern, he said firmly. That boy needs to learn. They both do. But doing the right thing didn't make it easier. In late January, I ran into Marcus's friend Derek at the hardware store. Derek had been friends with Marcus since high school, was at their wedding, knew the family well. Mr. Washington, he said, grinning, walking over. Haven't seen you in a minute. How you been? We made small talk for a few minutes. Then Derek said, You still helping Marcus out with that house? Man, that place is beautiful. I keep telling my wife we need to get something like that. I felt my jaw tighten. I don't help with the house anymore, I said carefully. Derek's smile faltered. Oh, I just figured, Marcus always talked about how you helped them get set up. Always talked. Past tense. Like I was a story they told people to make themselves look good. I left the hardware store feeling sick. Because I realized that Marcus had been telling people, friends, co-workers, probably Simone's family, that I'd helped them, using me as proof that they were blessed, that they had family support, that they had backup. But none of those people knew how I'd been treated. None of them knew about the disrespect, the dismissals, the trash can with my pie in it. They just knew the version Marcus wanted them to know. And that made me angrier than anything. Because even my sacrifices had been turned into their success story. By early February, the cracks in Marcus and Simone's perfect life were starting to show. I heard through Calvin, who'd heard through a mutual friend, that they'd missed a mortgage payment, that Marcus had tried to get a loan and been denied, that Simone had gone to her parents for help and they'd said no. The walls were closing in. And still, Marcus didn't call. His pride, or maybe Simone's pride, was keeping them from reaching out. And you know what? Good. Let them feel what it's like to struggle. Let them learn what I knew at 30, that life doesn't hand you nothing. You gotta earn it, bleed for it. And if you're lucky enough to have someone who loves you enough to help, you treat them like they matter. Because once they're gone, and no amount of begging brings them back. By March, I'd heard from 3 different people that Marcus and Simone were struggling. Mrs. Patterson, who lived 2 doors down from them, mentioned it at church. Your son's family doing okay, Vernon? I noticed they haven't been keeping up the yard like usual. I just nodded, said something vague about them being busy. Then my barber, Eddie, who'd been cutting my hair for 20 years, said his nephew worked at the same company as Marcus and heard he'd been pulling extra shifts, looking stressed. Everything good with the family? Eddie asked while trimming my edges. I looked at myself in the mirror, saw an old man with gray hair and tired eyes. Everything's fine, I lied, but it wasn't fine. And I knew it. The question was, how long before they broke? How long before pride turned into desperation? The call came on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. I was watching a basketball game, drinking a beer, and my phone rang. Marcus. I almost didn't answer. Let it ring 5 times. Then I picked up. Yeah, Dad. His voice was different, smaller, scared. Can I come over? I need to talk to you. In person. Something in his tone made my chest tighten. When? Now. I'm already on my way. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, beer in hand, heart pounding, wondering what was about to walk through my door. 20 minutes later, I heard a knock. I opened it, and Marcus stood on my porch looking like he'd aged 10 years. His eyes were red. His shirt was wrinkled. He looked thinner. Come in, I said. He walked past me, stood in the middle of my living room like he didn't know what to do with himself. You want something to drink? I asked. He shook his head. Just stood there, hands in his pockets, staring at the floor. We're going to lose the house, he said finally. His voice cracked. The bank sent us a foreclosure notice. We're 3 months behind. I tried. I tried everything, Dad. Loans, credit cards. I asked Simone's parents. They said no. They said we need to learn to budget better, like we're kids. He looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. I don't know what to do. Kennedy's going to have to switch schools. We're going to have to move into an apartment. Everything we built, it's falling apart. I stood there, arms crossed, and felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to fix it. Just a cold, hard truth settling in my chest. This is what they needed. This rock bottom moment. This realization that money doesn't grow on trees and Daddy's not a bank. What do you want me to say, Marcus? I asked quietly. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. I want you to help us. Please, Dad. I'm begging you. Where's Simone? I asked. He blinked. What? Where is your wife? Why isn't she here begging me herself? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. She doesn't know I'm here. She told me not to come, said you'd made your decision and we should respect it. I almost laughed. Respect. That word coming from Simone's mouth. So you're here behind her back? He nodded slowly. I had to try. You're my father. I'm your father when you need money, I said, and my voice was hard now. But at Thanksgiving, when your wife disrespected me, when she threw my dead wife's pie recipe in the trash like it was garbage, where was your father then? When I needed you to stand up for me, where were you? Marcus's face crumpled. I know I messed up. I should have said something. I should have defended you. I was wrong, Dad. I was so wrong. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He was crying now, full tears rolling down his face. And part of me wanted to comfort him, wanted to pull him into a hug like I did when he was little and scraped his knee. But I couldn't. Not yet. Sorry doesn't pay the bills, Marcus. Sorry doesn't undo 15 years of being treated like I don't matter. Sorry is just a word people use when they finally need something. I walked to the window, looked out at the street. You and Simone built a life on my money, on my sacrifices, and you never once asked if I could afford it. Never once asked if I was okay. You just took, and took, and took. I turned back to face him. And now that I'm not giving anymore, you're here. Not because you miss me, not because you realized you were wrong, but because you're desperate, and that breaks my heart more than anything Simone ever did. Marcus stood there, shaking, sobbing, and I felt something inside me harden even more. I can't help you, I said. Won't help you. You need to figure this out on your own, like I had to, like everyone else has to. He looked at me with such pain, such betrayal, like I was the one who'd wronged him, and maybe that's what hurt the most. That even now, even after everything, he still didn't understand. He still thought this was about money. He wiped his face, nodded once, and walked to the door. Stopped with his hand on the knob. I love you, Dad, he said without turning around. I know I haven't shown it, but I do. Then he left, and I stood in my empty living room, wondering if I'd just lost my son forever. 3 weeks passed. April came in cold and rainy. I didn't hear from Marcus, didn't hear from anyone. I went to church, went to the store, lived my quiet life, but I wasn't at peace. Every night I'd dream about that conversation, about the look on Marcus's face when I turned him away. I'd wake up sweating, questioning everything. Calvin called me on a Wednesday. Vern, you sitting down? His voice was serious. What happened? I asked, my heart already sinking. Marcus and Simone's house went into foreclosure. It's official. I saw it posted online. They got 30 days to vacate. I closed my eyes, felt the weight of it. Okay, I said quietly. There's more, Calvin continued. Word is Simone's losing it, blaming Marcus for everything, saying he should have kept you happy, should have kept the money coming. Their marriage is on the rocks, Vern. I didn't know what to feel. Relief? Sadness? Vindication? All of it mixed together into something heavy and bitter. On April 15th, tax day, someone knocked on my door at 9 in the evening. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw Marcus standing there, but he wasn't alone. Simone was with him. She'd never come to my house, not once in all the years they'd been married. I opened the door slowly. Marcus, Simone. Simone looked different. Her hair wasn't done. She wore sweatpants and a t-shirt. No makeup. Her eyes were puffy, like she'd been crying for days. She looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked small, vulnerable, human. Mr. Washington, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Can we please talk to you? I stepped aside, let them in. They sat on my couch, close together but not touching, like two people who'd forgotten how to be a team. I sat in my recliner across from them and waited. Marcus spoke first. Dad, we're here to apologize, both of us, for everything. He looked at Simone, and she nodded. I didn't understand, Simone said, and her voice shook. I didn't understand what you did for us, for Marcus, for our family. I thought we'd done it ourselves. I thought we were successful because we worked hard, but we weren't. We were successful because you worked hard, you sacrificed, and I treated you like, she stopped, bit her lip, like you were nothing, like you were in the way, and I'm so sorry. I studied her face, looked for the lie, looked for the manipulation, but all I saw was a broken woman who'd finally seen the truth. Why now? I asked. Why are you sorry now? Is it because you lost the house? Because you need money again? Marcus shook his head quickly. No, Dad. We're not here for money. We're here because I almost lost my wife, and I realized I already lost my father. He took a shaky breath. After I came here last month, things got bad, really bad. Simone and I fought every day. She blamed me back. I blamed her. We stopped talking, stopped sleeping in the same bed. Last week, she packed a bag and said she was leaving, taking Kennedy and moving back with her parents. He looked at his wife, and I saw real pain in his eyes. And in that moment, I realized something. I realized I'd become exactly what you said, someone who only valued people for what they could give me. I'd done it to you, and I was doing it to her, blaming her because she couldn't fix what I'd broken. Simone reached over and took his hand. We've been going to counseling, she said, talking about our patterns, our mistakes, and your name came up a lot. Because you were right. We used you, we disrespected you, and we never, ever thanked you for what you gave us. She looked directly at me, and tears started rolling down her face. That pie I threw away? Marcus told me it was your wife's recipe, that you spent hours making it, that it meant something. And I threw it away like trash, because I thought it made me look bad in front of my family, because I'm selfish, because I'm a horrible person. I felt something crack inside my chest. This woman who'd made me feel worthless for years, was sitting in my living room sobbing, taking accountability. We're losing everything, Marcus said. The house, our cars, our pride. And you know what? We deserve it. We deserve every bit of this struggle, because we forgot what matters. We forgot that family isn't about money or houses or looking successful. It's about love and respect and showing up for each other. He leaned forward. I'm not asking you to save us, Dad. I'm asking you to forgive us, to let us start over. Not with money, just with you being my father again, with us being a family again, even if we're a broke, struggling family living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I sat there looking at my son and his wife, and I saw them clearly for the first time in years. Saw them as two people who'd gotten lost, who'd let society and expectations and pride turn them into something ugly. And now they were trying to find their way back. Was it too late? I didn't know. But I knew one thing. I didn't want to die bitter, didn't want to die estranged from my only child. So I took a deep breath and said the words I'd been holding back for months. I forgive you, I said simply, and the weight that had been sitting on my chest for years lifted just a little. Marcus broke down, fell forward, covering his face with his hands, sobbing like a child. Simone cried quietly, nodding over and over like she couldn't believe what she'd heard. I got up from my chair, walked over to them, and put my hand on my son's shoulder. But things are different now, I said firmly. I'm not your bank anymore. I'm not your safety net. If you want me in your life, it's as your father, as Kennedy's grandfather, not as someone you come to when you need money. Marcus looked up at me, his face wet and raw. I don't want your money, Dad. I just want you. I just want my father back. And right then, right in that moment, I believed him. We sat there for 2 hours talking, really talking, about Lorraine, about my struggles when Marcus was young, about how I'd sacrificed so much that I'd lost myself, about how they'd taken advantage without realizing it. It wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty, but it was real. And real was what we needed. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in May, 45 minutes from my house, in a neighborhood that wasn't fancy but wasn't dangerous. Marcus sold both their cars and bought one used Honda to share. Simone got a full-time job at a marketing firm. They put Kennedy in public school. It was hard. I know because Marcus called me every week now. Not for money, but just to talk. To tell me about his day, about Kennedy's school play, about the argument he and Simone had over whose turn it was to do dishes. Normal stuff. Family stuff. And slowly, over the months, we rebuilt something I thought was lost forever. In July, they invited me over for dinner. I brought a pie. Not sweet potato this time. Apple, from a recipe I'd found online. When I handed it to Simone at the door, she took it with both hands like it was made of gold. "Thank you," she said, and her eyes filled with tears. "I'll protect this with my life." We laughed. It felt good to laugh. That night after dinner, after Kennedy had gone to bed, the three of us sat on their small balcony drinking iced tea and watching the sunset. Marcus looked different. He'd lost weight, but in a healthy way. Looked less stressed, more present. "Dad," he said, "I need to tell you something." I looked over at him. "Simone and I talked, and we want to pay you back. Not all at once, but a little each month, for everything you gave us over the years." I started to protest, but he held up his hand. "Let me finish. I'm not doing this because I feel guilty. I'm doing it because I want Kennedy to see it. I want her to understand that when someone helps you, you honor that. You respect it, even if it takes the rest of your life to pay them back." Simone nodded. "We calculated it. If we give you $300 a month, it'll take us a long time. Maybe 20 years, but we want to do it. We need to do it." I felt my throat tighten, felt tears sting my eyes. "You don't have to do that," I said quietly. "Yes, we do," Marcus said firmly, "because you're not just my father. You're the man who taught me what sacrifice looks like, and I'm sorry it took me 34 years to learn the lesson." Over the next year, things continued to improve. Marcus got a promotion. Simone's business started growing. They were still in the apartment, still driving one car, still living modest, but they were happy, really happy, and they included me in everything. Sunday dinners, Kennedy's birthday party, 4th of July barbecues. I wasn't an afterthought anymore. I wasn't invisible. I was grandpa. I was dad. I was family. One Sunday in September, almost a year after that terrible Thanksgiving, Marcus and Simone threw a small party. Just a few friends, Simone's parents and me. In the middle of it, Marcus stood up and clinked his glass. "I want to say something," he announced. Everyone got quiet. He looked at me. "A year ago, I almost lost the most important person in my life, my father. I'd taken him for granted, disrespected him, used him, and he did something that saved me. He walked away." Simone stood up beside him. "Mr. Washington taught us the hardest lesson we've ever learned, that love without respect is empty, that giving without appreciation is exhausting, and that sometimes the people who love you most have to let you fall so you can learn to stand up on your own." Marcus raised his glass. "To my dad, Vernon Lee Washington, the strongest man I know. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we gave you every reason to." Everyone raised their glasses. I sat there, an old man with tears running down my face, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not in what I'd given them, not in what I'd sacrificed, but in who they'd become, in who we'd all become. After the party, I drove home through Columbus streets I'd known my whole life, past the hospital where Marcus was born, past the church where Lorraine and I got married, past the Ford plant where I'd worked for 30 years. And I thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. The pain, the betrayal, the forgiveness, the rebuilding. I thought about Lorraine and wished she could see how it all turned out. "We did it, baby," I whispered. Our boy found his way back. Life wasn't perfect after that. Marcus and Simone still struggled sometimes, still called me frustrated about money or Kennedy or work. But the difference was, now they called me because they valued my advice, not my wallet. They called because they wanted my presence, not my presence. And that made all the difference. I'm 67 years old now, living in that same house on Sutton Road. My body's older, slower, but my heart's lighter than it's been in years. I see my granddaughter every week. She calls me Papa, gives me hugs that feel like everything good in the world concentrated into 50 pounds of little girl. Marcus and Simone are saving for another house, a smaller one they can actually afford. And you know what? I'm proud of them for that. Proud that they're building something real this time, something earned. Every month, like clockwork, I get a $300 check in the mail with a note attached. Sometimes it's from Marcus. Love you, Dad. Thank you for everything. Sometimes it's from Simone. You gave us so much more than money. You gave us dignity back. I don't cash all the checks. Sometimes I put them in a savings account for Kennedy's college fund. But I never tell them that because they need to keep giving, need to keep honoring what was broken and rebuilt. That's their healing. And mine is knowing that my son finally sees me, really sees me. So if you're watching this from somewhere in the world, if you've made it this far in my story, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. Tell me your city, your country. Because stories like mine, they happen everywhere, every culture, every family. And knowing you're out there listening, it makes me feel less alone. If this story touched you, if it made you think about your own family, your own relationships, hit that subscribe button. There's more stories on this channel, more lives, more lessons, more truth. And if you learned something today, if you felt something, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the hardest love is the love that knows when to walk away. And the strongest love is the love that finds its way back. Thank you for sitting with me. Thank you for listening to an old man talk about his life, his healing. You didn't have to stay, but you did. And that means something. See you soon. Lots of love.